Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. Here to discuss the effect of rising oil prices on our economy and our wallet is Dr. Trevor Tombe. He is a professor of economics at the University of Calgary and a research fellow at UC's School of Public Policy. Welcome back to the program.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Now, at the time of recording, because everything changes every 5 minutes, the Strait of Hormuz is still almost at a standstill for shipping. Can you give us your analysis of the situation?
Sure. So far be it from me at a moment like this to anticipate where things might be headed, but that strait is responsible for facilitating about 20% of the world's entire oil supply. And so when it is blocked to nearly all shipping traffic, that can have a big effect on prices. And that's indeed what we're seeing in energy markets over the past couple of weeks. They're up now into the mid $90 per barrel in terms of the West Texas Intermediate, the main North American oil price. That's about 50% larger or higher than where we were prior to the conflict beginning. And it goes beyond just oil. Fertilizer is also something that this region is a major supplier of. And those prices are also way up, which adds pressure to a very important agricultural input and therefore to food prices. And so the potential implications economically around the world, certainly to consumers, is quite large depending on how long this goes on for.
Well, I was going to mention fertilizers because obviously that at some point will have an impact on food costs basically around the world. I know that Canada has its own supply of oil and its own supply of fertilizer. So why is it affecting us so much?
Well, it is important to remember that these are global commodities. When their price rises, we are, of course, a large producer and exporter of them and others. But when those oil prices rise globally, they rise here as well. Now, that's where a lot of economic benefits can be earned in Canada. When the price of something that we produce a lot of goes up, that's good. But those who purchase that product do face a strain, either as consumers or as businesses buying inputs. So, globally traded commodities mean that when developments occur elsewhere, they matter here as well.
Now, can it be said that certain areas of our country, certain provinces, are set to gain some ground as a result of these higher prices? I'm thinking of Alberta, Saskatchewan, the grain producers and the oil producers.
That's right. Now, the effect of high oil prices are not going to be evenly distributed across the country. Oil producers, as you mentioned, Alberta, but also Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador, British Columbia produces a good deal of oil and natural gas now for export. And so energy prices do directly benefit those provinces, but there are also indirect benefits to others.
Mm.
When you have an increase in oil prices, that does also tend to increase how much is purchased by oil and gas firms from others around the country. There's a great deal being purchased from financial institutions in Quebec, for example, by oil and gas companies in Alberta, a very large amount of interprovincial trade tied to this and other sectors. And so empirically, researchers have looked at this and find that almost every province benefits from high oil prices in terms of their overall GDP growth. There are some exceptions to this. New Brunswick, for example, this is a province where refining is a very large share of economic activity there, and oil is an input into that manufacturing process. And so that's a province, along with PEI, that don't tend to benefit from high oil prices, but every other province does, including Ontario and Quebec, even though we don't tend to think of them as exposed, positively to high oil prices.
I'd like you to consider Canada's ability and its position to absorb the energy shock that is going on in the world right now. Our whole economy is obviously impacted, but are we better off than, say, the 70s and 80s when these shocks occurred?
Indeed, this is not the first, and nor will it be the last energy price shock that we experienced. Back in the 1970s, we were much more exposed economically to these kind of price changes for a couple of reasons. First, energy was a much larger share of input into the production of goods and services. We were about twice as energy intensive then as we are now. And we didn't produce as much oil then
Mm,
as we do now. So the benefit side of the equation was also lower. But as consumers, we spend now about 3% of our budget
mhm.
on gasoline, for example. That's roughly the same as where we were